So this is the HPLC, as you all know. There are 4 modules, so to turn it on, actually now I'm just going to turn it off because I turned it on previously. So this is module 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are where we keep the solvent. So we have 4 lines, A, B, C, and D. Our instrument is meant to be a little fancier than the way we use it. So we actually never use all 4 lines. C and D haven't been used in probably decades. So I wouldn't try to use it because the lines are pretty dirty and it has things in them that you do not want to run in the system. So we usually only use A and B, and that's mostly fine because we've never had a situation where we need to use all 4 at the same time. So we pretty much only use line A and line B. Line A is the one that has these 2 little dots next to it, but it says line A, and line B is the one that says line B. So usually it's in these solvents, which are the storage solvents. So then this is line A storage solvent, which is just water, and line B is usually acetonitrile, so it's the line B storage solvent. Don't use the storage solvents to run your samples because usually it's growing things like fungus and stuff because we're not like changing it very often. But the reason it's important is because we just want to store the ends of this in like buffer, or basically something that's wet, so that it doesn't dry out. So the bottom part of this, when you change out the solvents, you'll just uncap this and put it into whatever solvent you want. And try to be a little bit careful with the glass part because that's the part that breaks. And sometimes when it breaks, it starts creating bubbles, and that's kind of the cause of why we had the pressure fluctuation a few days ago. Because if the glass breaks, then I guess it's like damaging that part of it, so it starts creating like micro bubbles, which is what makes the pressure go up and down. So I would keep an eye out for that when you're changing in and out of solvents. Also, all solvents need to be filtered regardless of like which solvent you're using. Because there's basically like a filter in here which gets clogged with all of the dirt that is in the solvents that are not filtered. So I would try to do at least a 0.45 micron filter on all of the solvents that you're using for this instrument. You can use the filters that are hanging up over there, just like the HPLC filters. You can also use the ones that screw on directly onto the bottle, as long as they're at least 0.45 micron. Right. So then these are the 4 modules. So then from the lines, the solvents will go up through here, and then it will go into this module where it comes down here, and this is the degasser, right? So it's basically like we want to try as much as possible to put in solvents without bubbles in there, but if there are any tiny micro bubbles, then the degasser should be able to get it out. This is the mixer where the solvents will mix. There's A, B, C, and D for the 4 lines. And then it goes into here, and this is the purge valve. So if ever you want to do something with the instrument where you don't want it to actually flow onto the column, but you want the solvent to just flow through the lines and go into the waste, then this is the valve that you will turn open, because then it won't go onto the column and it'll just go into the waste. So over here we have an auto sampler, and this is partly related to the instrument being a little bit more fancy than we intended it to be. The auto sampler doesn't work. It hasn't for a long time, but we've never really needed to use it, so we pretty much just ignore this part. This is a fraction collector. To open it, you just open and then lift and then pull out. We have ability to collect about 118 fractions. Usually when you just come to the instrument, sometimes you'll see these 4 rows are filled, and that's just the wash tubes that are present there, because it makes your life easier if it's already here and you don't have to put the tubes in here every time you have to wash them. And that's because we also always try to do a pre-wash as well as a post-wash, because our instrument is pretty old, and the only reason it still works well is because we take care of it and we make sure to do a pre and a post-wash every time we use the instrument. So the tubes in there are for that, and the wash tubes, since we don't want to increase the dishwashing person's job and also it's kind of wasteful, we just reuse the same tubes, and these are the tubes that are kept here that are dirty that we just keep reusing for waste. Okay. And then in terms of the column, this column that is on here is the one that we use the most. It's a prep column, which is the packing material on it, and it is a C18 prep column. And usually we try not to inject more than 50 milligram on this column. We have a few other columns. All the extra columns are kept in here. Many of them don't work, but a lot of them are labeled as such as not working. The other columns that do work, one of them is this one, which is a C8 column. This is a semi-prep column. So on this one, I usually would aim to inject no more than 25 milligrams. And then this is our analytical column, which is also a C18 column. So it's kind of the same material as this one, but it's just much smaller. So if you have 5 mgs or less than that, then you can try using the analytical column. So all of these columns are compatible with water as well as acetonitrile, which are the usual typical solvents that we use for the HPLC. All of them should also be compatible with methanol, I think. And in the solvents, if you want to add additives, usually acid, 0.1% formic acid or 0.1% TFA is okay. About 10 millimolar ammonium acetate is okay if you want to buffer it to a higher pH, but I will warn you to not add the ammonium acetate to pure acetonitrile because it will not dissolve and it will just crash out. So in that case, you want to add in like maybe 80% acetonitrile and 20% water to dissolve the ammonium acetate in here. The other thing to keep in mind if you're adding salts into the solvents is that pure acetonitrile is not soluble with the salt, so you never want the line to come into contact with the salt if it's only in pure organic solvent. So for example, I use acetonitrile with ammonium acetate in it, so every time I use it I actually wash the lines because you don't want the pure acetonitrile to come into contact with the salt. So then I'll take out both the lines and I'll just put it into a beaker with millicube water and then wash it out for 5-10 minutes at flow rate of 8 ml per minute, which is okay for this column, to just remove the pure acetonitrile so that the salt doesn't come in contact with that, and then you can move it back into your own solvents. Okay. So then this is the loop that we use to be able to inject our sample. This is the most common loop that we use, which is the 2 ml loop. But it's not actually 2 ml, it's probably a little bit less. So if you really want to be safe and like prevent any loss of material, would recommend dissolving in about 1.5 ml to be able to inject on this loop. So even though it says 2 ml, it's probably not really 2 ml. So the additional loops that we have are kept at the back over here. We have a 20 microliter loop as well as a 200 microliter loop. So if you want to use the analytical, you should use a 200 microliter loop just because the column is so small. Otherwise, if you inject 2 ml, that's just the volume of the entire column. You're not going to get any separation. And it is also really important to filter all of your samples before injecting on the column. So you should be filtering it through at least like a 0.45 filter again. So oftentimes I'll use the filters that are kept here. So this material is PTFE, which should be compatible with most of the solvents you would use on here. It's compatible with water, acetonitrile, and I think even methanol. So this is a 0.45 micron filter, so you should make sure to at least like filter it through that. So we have syringes over here that you can use for the filtering. You can also use the spin filters, like if you want to do the 200 microliter one. We used to have mass spec spin filters which were compatible with organic solvents. They're currently on back order, have been for a really long time. But if it's just water, mostly water, you can use the sec filters that we keep on there. So if it's really small volumes, you get less loss of samples, so it's good for that. Okay, so then this is our actual instrument. Maybe I should have turned it on. So these 4 modules, this is just the sampler. This is the pump which controls this part of it. This is the lamp which controls all of the observances, and this is the fraction collector. So the part of this instrument that really does have a lifetime is the lamp, which is the UV detector, which detects all of the UV that is in your sample basically. Do you know how many hours the lifetime really is?
I think 2,500 hours.
Okay, do you know how to look for, okay, we can check. But basically, if you want to leave the instrument on for a longer period of time, I would make sure to only at least turn that part off, because that is the lamp will like burn out because it has a lifetime. Everything else, if you want to leave on for a longer period of time, that's okay, it doesn't really matter. So suppose sometimes, you know, like I have to be away from the lab for 2 hours, but I want to start a wash, then I'll find somebody in the lab and say, after my run is done, can you just like turn off the lamp so that it doesn't burn, so that it doesn't burn out, so that we can extend the lifetime of the instrument. What else? So then the waste like collects in here. So this is a special waste which is mostly a mixture of water and acetonitrile, and usually it's blue, not to freak out because of the celiac team. But if it fills up, then the waste tag creating is pretty much the same as like how you create a waste tag for everything else. So just keep an eye on that, because it's really easy to actually kind of like not look at that, because we're never really looking at like the waste. So then if it starts like filling up and overflow, then just like change it out to like a new waste. Okay, so this is on now. So this is the part that you'll want to turn off, the part that is called MWD. So you just right click on it and you just click switch off, and then it'll turn just this module off. So you want to keep an eye out for that. If you want to turn it back on, you just either right click and switch on. You can also use these buttons that are right here.
You can hover the mouse over the UV lamp.
This one?
This one.
Oh. Maybe it's because it's not on yet.
Oh yeah. Maybe try hovering it over the little tag.
What tag?
Like that gray tag thing. This.
Oh.
It might just be because it's still holding up.
Yeah, we can wait. So for the fraction collector, the other thing I will say is when you turn it on, like for a little bit, you won't be able to, okay, it actually just clicked if you heard that click. Before that, if you try to close it, it won't close. After that click, if you close it, it will close and you'll hear some noises. It's resetting the fraction collector, a very important step. So then usually the first time you turn everything on, it'll automatically reset, so you don't have to do anything. But every subsequent round that you do, you have to go over here. So it'll turn green once it's done resetting, but you right click over here and then you click on reset fraction collector. I'm not going to click it right now because it's in the middle of just doing it already, but you want to always reset the fraction collector, and that's because the fraction collector is going like fraction 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So when you stop the previous round, now it's at whatever previous fraction you stopped it at. So then it'll start collecting where there's no fractions, and it'll basically like spill liquid all over there, and the instrument will be like, oh no, it's like wet everywhere, I'm gonna die. So then it won't let you actually use it for about at least 40 minutes until it's fully dry and it's like, okay, like I feel better now. So it's a very annoying thing to have to deal with. So I would make sure to try to remember. I think we had a note somewhere over here that said, remember to reset it. That maybe now gone. Wait, where is it? Oh yeah, there you go. Reset fraction collector. So an important step that you should remember to do between every subsequent one. Maybe now I can see it.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. It's been 29.94. So, and you said it was supposed to be 2500.
Yeah.
Okay, so technically it's already burned, so I would really try to keep this off unless you need it on. And we know it's broken if it stops detecting the absorbances, I guess. Okay, and before Harrison leaves, he can show me how to replace it if we need to replace it.
It's really easy, actually.
Okay. And in certain times, if the software is actually like fully